there could be 2 or 3 or 10 x's
Okay.
causing 1 y.
Okay.
So when we're testing this, what we would actually end up doing is testing the relationship. We're testing the relationship between these 2 variables and then between these 2 variables.
Okay.
So you would find that, like if you pulled job search out, you would have, your model would look like dissatisfaction is causing turnover, but as soon as you put job search in, the relationship between dissatisfaction and turnover actually decreases because you're now accounting for the real cause of turnover, which is job search.
Right. Thanks. Okay. So let's just to help as a quick reminder. Sometimes we get confused between moderators and mediators. The test is, does X cause Z? If it does, then it's a mediator. In a moderating relationship, X does not cause our moderator. So the fact that I am dissatisfied with my job does not increase the external opportunities available to me. Does that make sense? So that's how we think about it. If X is causing Z, then it's a mediator. If X is not causing Z, if that's some external factor, then we're looking at a moderator. Okay. So here's our juicy secret. The vast majority of academic articles are basically trying to do one of 2 things. Add a new XY relationship or add a new Z variable. Okay? So that, I mean, it seems like what we just went over is pretty simple, right? There's 4 different options: X, Y, Z moderator, Z mediator. It seems really simple. And in fact, it is pretty straightforward. But if you know that this is what almost all academic articles that you're trying to do, or trying to read, are doing, it helps because you just have to figure out which one they're doing and what the variables are. And if you've done that, then you've pulled the most important thing out of the article. So once you figure out what the X, Y, and Z are in the study, you can answer your wife or husband's question, what was the article about? Yeah, Chad.
That's assuming all of their analysis was correct.
So we'll get to that.
Their constructs are valid, right?
Right. So yeah, we'll get to that.
We're not analyzing that stuff yet.
Right.
It's just big picture. This is what the paper's
big,
trying to do.
Right. Big picture. This is what the paper's trying to do. So thanks.
Doesn't necessarily show that they did it.
Right. So.
Get like a top tier journal that probably did. Not necessarily.
Probably.
Probably, but not necessarily. That's exactly right. So what I want to suggest is that when you sit down to read an academic article, the first thing that you should do is figure out what the X, Y, and Z are, and even draw a picture at the top of the article that says, this is the relationship they are trying to prove. If you do that, it transforms the way you read an article, because now you know what you're looking for. You know that this is the relationship that they're trying to support. And so then what you're looking for, as Chad has pointed out, is how well did they support this argument. So I can't overemphasize how helpful this has been for me. Because when I sit down to read an article, I can pull the gist of the article out in 5 minutes if I need to, instead of the 2.5 hours. And I'm not suggesting that we should read all of our articles in 5 minutes, but I am suggesting that if you can pull that sort of really important component out, then you're light years ahead of where you would be after 2.5 hours and not knowing what the article was about. Okay? Questions about that?
Well, I was gonna say, and that's assuming that it's using this type of
Yeah.
thought.
So again, if it's published in AMJ, 98% chance that it's using causal variance. Sometimes I'm working on a project where I'm literally reading through the entire AMJ database, or a third of it. And I've seen 2 articles that don't do this.
Some of them are theoretical.
Even conceptual pieces, good AMR pieces do this.
Just not empirically.
They don't present, their evidence that they present isn't data, it's logical arguments.
Right.
But even good AMR conceptual pieces do this.
So the pieces that won't will be things like maybe a review article, but even sometimes review articles will be trying to review the causal relationship itself and how
Right.
it's changed.
Yeah.
So usually review articles will do this. Meta-analyses will do this. The pieces that won't are the different types of scholarship that we talked about at the beginning. So process theorists don't care about causal variance. They just care about sequence of events. So if you see something that says a process theory blank, you can be pretty sure that they'll have pictures that have boxes and arrows, but they're not trying to show a causal relationship. They're just trying to say this happens and then this happens and then this happens. Interpretivists will often, or ethnographers will do that. Won't look for a causal relationship. They'll just look for some interesting phenomenon and want to describe it. But also, articles that are written about scholarship. So, for example, some of Dave Wetton's writing, where he talks about how to be a good scholar, he's not building a causal relationship. He's just saying, you know, this is how we be a good scholar. Often, if you see articles written by the editors of the journals, it may be something like that. But again, the vast majority of the work you'll do is this sort of causal models. Let's see, so I've got about 5 more minutes here.
Sorry.
No, that's we're doing just fine. So I want to show you a couple of examples. This is what I just took a screenshot from an AMJ article. This is actually how I have it in my database. I drew these boxes and arrows on. But what you'll find is that within the title and the abstract, you can very often find the answers to what are the variables in question. So let's read through this. Linking ecological and economic research on organizations, we propose that the effects of rivals' horizontal upstream and downstream alliances are determined by. So we stop there and we say, okay, the effects of are determined by. This is our hint that we've got a cause. And this is apparently, they're determined by, so this is our why. Apparently this is what they care about, the phenomenon. So what are they determined by? Well, the degree to which they foreclose a focal firm's alliance opportunities and increase industry carrying capacity. So now, what we know is that in this article, they have 2 major X's. The one is the degree to which they foreclose a focal firm's alliance opportunities, and the second is increase industry carrying capacity. And so, or really just carrying capacity, right? So even if I don't know what those things are, and I don't, that's a question for me to find out, right? So now I'm going into the article and I'm saying, okay, well I know that this is going to be important because they're saying it causes this other thing. I know this is going to be important because it's causing this other important thing. So as I read, now I know what the article's about, probably my first question is gonna be, okay, what are these three things? And fortunately, they're gonna tell us in the article.
Do they generally tell you in the
Yeah.
article?
Yep. They'll often define them. If not, they'll refer to someone, they'll cite someone who has defined it. And so, but you can, usually when it's the focal constructs, so the variables that they care about, they're going to talk a lot about them. So you'll learn a lot about those variables in the article. Okay, here's another one that we can look at. So I love this one because in the title it gives us a hint, right? Acquisition returns, increase in firm size, and CEO compensation, the moderating role of monitoring. So what do you think they're doing in this article?
How monitoring moderates.
Right, so somehow monitoring is our Z variable, right? And we know CEO compensation is sort of important to them. So let's go down and see if we can find out more. Our theoretical argument is that the effect of acquisition-related factors on CEO compensation. So what have they just built for us? An X and Y is contingent on the intensity of monitoring activities. So remember how we talked about the different levels that moderators affect at different, or the relationship depends on different levels of our moderator? Well, the intensity of monitoring activities, intensity of monitoring are different levels. And so, again, we haven't even read the entire first sentence of the abstract, and we know what the important contribution, what we're supposed to take away from this article. Okay? There's one more I wanted to show you because we haven't talked much about this, but we read through and we find out the hazard rate models of differences in the effects of these logics showed a decrease in the importance of professional determinants of organization structure and an increase in the salience of its market determinants. We can denote, so causal logic, we can say that something causes something else to increase or causes something else to decrease. And we can denote that in our causal stories by putting a little, if it's an increase, we put a plus below the line, below our arrow, and if it's a decrease, we put a minus sign above or below the arrow. So I just wanted to mention that because sometimes you'll see it. If there are no plus or minuses, then we assume it's an increase.
Is that the same thing as saying inversely correlated, or is that different?
Yeah, I think you could say that. That as one goes up, the other goes down. So, yeah. Okay, so we're out of time. I'm going to take 3 more minutes. Is that okay with everyone? Once you've got the basis and you know kind of what the overall thing is that you're looking for, then you can look at some of the rest of the article, and knowing what the authors are trying to do in each part of the article helps, because depending on what I want to learn, I know where to look in the article. And so if I'm interested in what other people in the field have said about this subject or the relationship or either of the phenomena, I'll go to the introduction. If I'm looking for the specific hypotheses that the author is testing, and by the way, this is where I would look if I can't find the XY in the abstract, I go to the hypotheses. These are usually at the end of the introduction or right before the methods section.
So they don't delineate a separate literature review in management stuff usually?
Not really. So literature review is all part of the introduction and the theory section. And that's actually